Firstly, I want to say whatever happened to me, and nothing happened to me, but whatever happened, you would say it happened in spite of my sinfulness, but I say it happened because of my sinfulness. And I think that's exactly why what happened, what I'm going to share with you happened. So let me kind of go back a little bit. I, for the last 10 years, was the senior pastor of the St. Paraskevi Greek Orthodox Church, Shrine Church. Shrine because we actually have a flowing holy water shrine, a place where people come to receive holy water that originated at the original St. Paraskevi Church in Therapia, Asia Minor. It is the only St. Paraskevi Greek Orthodox Church in the Greek Orthodox Archdiocese of America. I don't know why. Every choreo in Greece has a St. Paraskevi. I don't know why this is the case, but that's the case. So when I was in North Carolina at St. Constantine and Helen in Fayetteville, and the Archbishop called me and asked if I would consider coming to St. Paraskevi, I thought to myself, oh my goodness, what a blessing. I always remember that place as being a holy site, a place where miracles take place, because I remember hearing about miracles. So I said, absolutely, even though we really weren't considering going back to New York. That's where my wife and I grew up. We wanted to see the rest of the country. But we were happy to go wherever God wanted us to go. So, and I've always, when someone asks me what it was like, or what is it like to be the priest of St. Paraskevi, I'd say, I don't feel like I'm a priest of a parish. I feel like I'm a caretaker of a holy place. And that's what made St. Paraskevi really special for me. So, in the 10 years that I served the community, there were many people who came from all over the country, as far as California, Florida, on pilgrimages, most of them with eye ailments. And very simply, they would come, we would pray over them, anoint them with holy water. We also had the relics of St. Pandalemon, and so we had the holy oil over the relics, and we would anoint them. And the truth is that I probably have at least 100 accounts of people who left and wrote back to me. A couple, 3 or 4 of them were from doctors. Detached retina, macular degeneration, and other similar ailments, where they say the doctors are dumbfounded. They don't understand how or why. Or people would run back to the church a day later or hours later and say, I don't know what happened, and so we would be in awe. And we have these testimonies that have been collected, and I guess they're in the process. Now it's somebody else's responsibility of putting together and putting them in a book. But and then we also had a ministry of mailing, where we sent it to Indonesia, to China, to South America, to every part of the country. And we would get letters back of miracles. So, what's today's date? 7. So a year ago, in 4 days, the 11th of November, that's what happened, of 2013. I was leading a prayer service for the American Legion. And by the way, I'm here in Massachusetts, but I'm driving back Monday night, because the American Legion Post said, you're still our chaplain. We want you to come down. And so I'll come down and do the prayer service. But on that day, I offered the prayer service as a former contracted chaplain at Fort Bragg Army Base. When they found out that I had ministered to the military, they asked me, can you please serve as our chaplain? So every year I would offer this prayer. I did as I always did, with my heart, and following the prayer service, Applebee's restaurant has a wonderful tradition. They feed all the veterans lunch for free, or maybe for the whole day, I don't know. But so after the prayer service, we went to Applebee's, and while I was there, I was introduced to a gentleman I had never met before. And I noticed that he had a walking stick, and his wife was next to him. So they introduced me, and he said, I said, hello, my name is Father Dimitri. And he said, Father Dimitri, nice to meet you. My name is Michael. And I held his hand, and I kind of held on to his hand. I don't think I've ever really had a conversation with a blind person. I was a priest 16 years before that. Isn't that funny? Like where an intimate conversation with a blind person. So I kind of held on to his hand. I didn't realize it at that time. He told me afterwards, when you held my hand, that left an impression on me. So we were talking, and he said, "Are you the Greek priest?" And I said, "Yes." And he goes, "I was going to stop by and talk to you." And I go, "Really?" I go, "Were you going to come for the holy water?" And he said, "What holy water?" I go, "In our shrine." He goes, "What shrine?" I said, "Our patron saint, Saint Paraskevi, is the patron saint for eye health." And he said, "I never knew that." "No, I was going to stop by and ask you permission to walk my new guide dog. You see, my old guide dog is really in pain. In fact, his dog died about 3 weeks ago, the one guide dog. We're still in touch." So, and he says, "I was walking my new guide dog with my old guide dog so he could train him in the field at the high school next door to the church. But last week they kicked me out. They said I was an insurance liability." And I said to him, "Of course." And he goes, "I was going to come by and ask you permission if I can walk it in the parking lot and in the grassy area in the back of the church." I said, "Of course you can. But do me a favor, let me know when you're going to be here so that, or when you come here, come inside so I can pray a little prayer service for you and anoint you with holy water." And he said, "That would be lovely." So I gave him my card, I had my email address, and I wrote down my cell phone number in the back. And that evening he emailed me, and he said, "Father, confession is an ancient discipline. Its benefits are well noted, well documented. It's been many years since anyone's heard my confession. I'd have you hear mine. Would you?" And so here I am, asked to give an Orthodox sacrament to a non-Orthodox person, just being rejected already by this institution of learning. And so my answer was simple: "Of course I will." And I said, "Look, I'm not going to wear my Petrachili, I'm not going to wear my stole. Why can't one Christian hear the confession of another Christian?" Right? So we planned for him to come. There were some obstacles. Ended up being the 18th of November. And so that morning he came in, and he came in with his wife. His wife waited in the breezeway. And he said, "Father, before we begin the service, I want to just share some things with you about my past." And so he told me basically about his past. And he said, he grew up in upstate New York, and he had a very difficult childhood. His, he was exposed to molestation, and his mother committed suicide in front of him. Basically, his father abandoned him, and he was raised in foster families. At 16, he illegally joined the Marines, and then when they found out, they kicked him out. But then at 18, he went back in, and he was in the Marines during this time. Later on, his brother committed suicide. After a number of years in the Marines, he was discharged honorably, and then he worked for a local fire department by the St. Charles River on the New York State side, Canada border. And there he was a rescue diver. A lot of times it would be finding bodies, unfortunately. In 1989, I didn't know the date until a month later, but it happened to be July 26th. What's July 26th? The feast day of Saint Paraskevi. On July 26th, he responded. His fire department responded to a call. One of the ships that was carrying xylene, solvent chemical, was leaking. And so they went there. It was a hot day. They went and they responded to this call, and they were exposed to that chemical, and a number of them got very sick. Within 2 years, 3 of them had died. from foreign causes, and they didn't want to make the connection. Michael ended up having numerous tumors behind his eye and his throat. He had over 100 surgeries to remove things. And anyway, eventually he was incapable to continue being a rescue diver for the fire department, and they kind of pushed him aside. His eyesight began to deteriorate to the point 8 years ago where he completely lost all vision in his right eye, and all he could see on a good day was shadows in his left eye, and that was the eyesight he was left with when I met him. He said his confession. Before we actually sat down, I did a basic prayer service, not every single prayer. You know, we always need some out to say I didn't do a full service. There's no bishop here right now. What would Jesus do, right? When all else fails. So I didn't know if I was going to read the prayer of absolution that we read when we have the penitent there within the context of a sacrament, but I felt very strongly that I should read that prayer. And I asked him to kneel, and I helped him down, and I put my hand over his head, and I read the prayer. And just before I finished the prayer, just before I said Amen, I don't know how to explain this because it hasn't happened to me. It had not happened to me before. It certainly hasn't happened to me since, but it was as if there was a tap on my head. I just felt a vibration. It felt like a big engine, like, I don't know how to explain it, but it went kind of through my body. And I was kind of freaked out. I don't know how to explain this, but anyway. And what I noticed is after it was going through my body, that Michael's head was there, and his head shuddered like this. But here now, and now we're both crying. But I didn't know how to respond to him. I didn't know what to say. I said nothing. I helped him up. We walked out the door. His wife was waiting in the breezeway. Now, there's in between the church and the administration building or the classroom building, there's an open garden area with stairs that lead down to a grotto shrine, underground shrine. Inside the shrine is the holy water, and as it pours out. So his wife and I helped him. Before when she saw us both crying. She's like, "What just happened?" Never mind. Something like that. So we went down the stairs, and inside the shrine there's a 4-panel icon, and basically it shows Saint Paraskevi, 179 A.D. She's being presented in front of the local ruler. And then you see her in a cauldron of boiling oil, because the whole thing was that he wanted to make her part of his concubine. She refused. He tortured her, and one of the torture devices he used was a cauldron of boiling oil. But she was divinely protected, and no harm was coming to her. He thought that it was the servants who did not make the oil hot enough and started screaming at the servants. "You fools, it's not hot enough." But Saint Paraskevi dipped her hand. Now she's sitting in the pot of boiling oil. She dipped her hand. She goes, "Oh, it's hot enough," and flicked the oil into his eyes, and he became blind. As he's screaming, she said, "You can receive your eyesight back again if you believe in my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ." And she touched his eyes, and he was able to see. Then he started screaming out to his servants, "Get her out of there! Get her out of there!" And he converted and was baptized. But the third panel, you see a new ruler coming in and someone beheading her. On the next panel, you see a church that was built in her honor. And on the base of the church, a natural spring started flowing. And people with eye problems, eye health issues, were healed. And so I was explaining to him, though he couldn't see, but his wife could see the panels. And so I said, so here in 1969, a group of our parishioners decided to build this shrine, and they went to Constantinople, got the blessing of the patriarch, went to the to the shrine, brought back water, the holy water from that shrine, and that water is in a mixing tank. As the Long Island water pours into this mixing tank, it overflows, and as it spills out, it comes out of a spout from the wall. And so that water is constantly being sanctified because the Long Island water goes into the holy water and it comes out holy. And I said, here's the water. So I did a little prayer service of health and healing for him, anointed him with holy water, and then he went with the holy water and he started washing his face like this. And he took a step back and he said, there's a woman here. And he's pointing at the icon of St. Paraskevi, the large one that we had on the wall on that side. So I'm thinking it was his left eye that he could see shadows. Oh, Michael, can you see the outline of the icon? That's St. Paraskevi. Can you make her out? And he said to me, you don't understand, Father. He turned to me and goes, I see the color of your eyes. I haven't seen a color in 7 years, and I see the cross over here, and I see this round icon, I see this. And in front of all of us, his wife and myself, we're just crying in awe. Father Lou, the second priest, runs down because he hears the commotion. My church secretary runs down, she hears the commotion. What happened? We're all crying. And for about 45 minutes, we talk a little bit, but we're all kind of buzzing. He leaves. I had a parish council meeting that night. It was a rough time, I'll tell you. It was the best parish council meeting I had in years, to be honest with you. The next morning I had an early appointment, and I get to the church around 10 o'clock, and my secretary says, he's here. I said, who's here? The man who was blind, but he can see now? And I said, oh my goodness. I ran inside, and there's Michael looking at the dome, and we have this beautiful 7-day creation depiction in the dome. And he's like, oh my goodness. I never went back into the church after the healing. I don't know. It's so beautiful. I said, Michael, I'm so sorry. I didn't know you were going to be here this morning. I would have come earlier. And his response was, where else would I go, Father? Where else would I go? And so for 2 hours we sat and talked. And there were two main questions that we spoke about the most. And that was, the first one was, how long will this last? Is this temporary, Father? I said, how's your eyesight today? Better than it was yesterday. And so I didn't know how to respond. I just said, glory be to God. I don't know. I'll tell you this, God doesn't save us from drowning just to throw us into deeper water.
Yeah, right.
So I said, it'll last for as long as it does, and you'll glorify God every day for that. Then he said, and that brings us to the second thing. How do I say thank you to God? And that was a conversation that took many, many hours, over many, many days, because he came every morning for the next 30 days and was waiting for me. And I would tell him, tomorrow there's liturgy, I want to let you know. And he said, okay, is it okay for me to stay here? Absolutely. And mind you, we began an email ministry, which is definitely divinely inspired, because I'm looking at some of the things, and he writes so beautifully. But even the things that I wrote back to him, I said, how did I write that? And you say, how did I write that? So every morning, and then after liturgy, he'd write me, I have no words to explain what I just experienced. I've never seen a more beautiful service in my life. And even though the language was foreign to me, the emotion and the spirit that was in here was very, very familiar. So, about 4 days later, he says to me, Father, please tell me, the day of the healing, when I was kneeling, please tell me you felt what I felt. I'm like, yes, I did. You did. You felt the same thing, you know. So, about, 3 weeks afterwards, he said to me, I'm trying to get an email that he sent to me, but about 3 weeks later, he said to me, Father, does the Orthodox Church have, God bless you, does the Orthodox Church have American Indian saints? And I said, I know that we have Aleutian saints, we have Alaskan saints. I don't believe we have Native American saints. Why do you ask? And he said, the woman in the shrine. I go, Saint Paraskevi. He goes, no. It wasn't the icon that you thought I was referring to. There was a woman in the shrine. I said, okay. And I said, all right, so why are you asking about the American Indian saint? He goes, because in the Catholic Church, there's an American Indian saint. Her name is Saint Kaiteri Tetetawaka, or something like that. All right?
Yeah.
Huh? Right? Okay.
Kaiteri, yeah.
And so I said, okay. And she said, the saint name is like that. And I go, like what? He goes, Tetetoko. I said, what? He said, Tetotoko. And I said, Theotokos? And I said, we refer to the Virgin Mary in three ways. Panagia, or Most Holy, Virgin Mary, and then Theotokos. And I said, the woman you saw there was not Saint Paraskevi, you're right, it was the Virgin Mary. And he paused for a second, and he said, Father, please don't bring that up again. He goes, all I know is she looked down at me and at you, and she smiled at both of us. So the first week was difficult for him because, should I continue? Should I make it short? Okay. The first week was difficult for him because I believe he was having a lot of confusion. And the reason is this. Because he had his vision, he had a memory of the sighted world. And so with his other senses, he was able to formulate a picture of what was in front of him. All of a sudden, now he has his sight back, and now he's getting two different stimuli. And he's confused. And it was very difficult for him. So I'm going to read. This is the Saturday afterwards. So this was 5 days afterwards. Father Dimitrios, as one might expect, the past few days have been extraordinary, indescribably so. Cindy, his wife, and I are having an ongoing conversation of incredulous seeing is believing, disbelief, fueled by the events of these past few weeks, and most notably the past few days. To put it mildly, Father, both of us are somewhat overwhelmed. I'm not asking a question so much as I'm trying to ascertain where it is exactly that I am in this unfolding situation. I don't know if you will be able to help to offer any insight at all as to the recollections or reflections of others who have may undergone a similar experience as the one I'm currently in. And I'm thinking to myself, firstly, there was never someone who was completely blind or legally blind, and even legally blind, that got his eyesight back. Secondly, it's never happened in front of me so definitively. That was, Any observations that you would have would be greatly appreciated. I don't know if I can accurately describe it or coherently state my situation, but I will make an honest attempt. I am discovering that there appears to be an intangible apogee and perigee to the wild swing on this strange pendulum on which I am thoroughly suspended and wholly invested. What a beautiful picture he paints. To give you some idea of how completely disoriented I feel in this moment and how confusing it has become, let me share just a little bit of its nature with you. I would deeply appreciate any observations that you have with me. Okay, so simply put, in the moment, I do not know where I am in it, and I'm completely and totally lost with regard to where it's heading. I feel as though I am being uncontrollably swept along an unfamiliar shore by a benign current I can neither control or anticipate. There is no feeling of immediacy or urgency to it, and I have found that I need only close my eyes to retreat from it. But the overlapping juxtaposition of my senses is causing me enormous confusion and distraction. I am left to wonder if this is an altogether shared experience or is it unique to me. I did not know what make or color car my sister-in-law drove in until yesterday. I am seeing people I have never seen before, speaking voices I've heard many times over, but never placed to a face. They are both unfamiliar and familiar to me. In the instant, I connect the two. I could always feel the wind on my skin and hear the leaves rustling because of it, but now I see that invisible breeze move through the trees and feel it and see it move the branches as it does. The gentle and persistent assault upon the totality of my awareness is unnerving at times. Up till Monday, I had no perception of depth, and now it is all that I see in the rainbow of colors and the forgotten scales of structures and the textures of touch. The simplest step has become to me an unfolding, blossoming moment of discovery. Everything has a radiant, subtle shine to it. I have not seen my lovely bride's face clearly for over 10 years, and I have not seen it at all for over 7. She is more beautiful than I remember. I have finally seen the faces of my grandchildren for the very first time since they were born. All I knew of them were their blurred embraces and the smiles in their voices. Can you help me to understand why and how completely lost I feel right now? What were once vague impressions and ephemeral shadows have now become concrete and material objects with angles, points, and corners. I can now see everything I stumbled over, that twisted an ankle, sprained a wrist, and inflicted a bone bruise, or broken a bone. Imagine, oh, that's what I tripped over. I could not be more helpless in my distractions. It is one of the strangest feelings I have ever had, where just days ago I was content to count steps and turns. Now I'm overjoyed to count ceiling and floor tiles and telephone poles, sidewalk cracks, streetlights, and signs. It is all beyond me, beyond any memory I may have held of them. I know that some of this continual distraction should have been expected, but the sheer enormity of it is almost beyond belief. It is certainly outside the realm of any of my experiences in life. I find myself closing my eyes to do things I used to do in the dark. When I open my eyes, I feel lost in the visual cornucopia of the side of the world, adrift on an uncharted ocean filled with images and feelings I had long ago given up as lost. I actually tie my shoes easier with my eyes closed than with them open. And that is just one example of the countless heart-wrenching discoveries I've made. I hear myself saying to myself over and over again, so this is what that looks like. I have forgotten and abandoned so much of the darkness which was my world. It's not like forgetting how to ride a bicycle. I have no reference point by which a reasonable comparison could be made. All I really know, and am completely sure of in the mystery of this moment, is that what has happened to me is a genuine and authentic miracle. I hear the law of parsimony echoing in my mind and realize that in truth, all things being equal, the simplest explanation is usually the right one. It could not have been more simple. And I have already experienced the suspicion that doubt entails. I have already been asked if it could not possibly be something far more complex of medical or scientific origin. Unbeknownst to me, my wife had our daughter follow me from a discreet distance yesterday for fear that I would end up laying in an injured heap somewhere along my daily walk. As I futilely tried to explain what has happened to me, for me, to my closest friends and children, I find that little to no explanation is even possible. My son called me this morning at Cindy's request and implored me to see an optometrist and my cardiologist. He was firmly convinced that I have suffered some manner of stroke or other neurological blow, and that my repossessed sight, as unfamiliar as it currently is to me, is a telling symptom of some sort or indication that my vision has in fact taken a final turn for the worst. I readily and honestly admit a severe impairment of distraction, but my heart and spirit tells me this too will eventually pass. As I wait for the intensity of distraction to dissipate, I stand dumbfounded at the thousands of emerging unwilling compromises and concessions I made to the darkness of my world. This is where I am in this moment. This is the tip of an epic iceberg I cannot yet see, and yet it's impossible for me to describe. The dimensions of it are still beyond my grasp. Have I made any sense at all, Father? because truly my world has not been turned upside down, as your wife Flora suggested. A more accurate description is that it has in reality been turned inside out. Michael. This is basically the scope of our communication, and my response to him was, how am I, a sinner, supposed to tell you, why this happened or why this happened? And this is, all right, we referenced the movie Awakenings. Who remembers the movie Awakenings, right? Robert De Niro and the late Robin Williams, right? And it's about a doctor who found a cure for some ailment that caused people to sort of freeze physically. And as they started taking this medication, they were able to move around and had their lives back. But towards the end of the movie, they returned back to that state of comatose, and it's a sad movie, really. And the name of the doctor that Robin Williams played, Dr. Oliver Sacks. Very good. Guess who's the one person who writes about what the experience is of someone who loses a sense and gets it back again? Dr. Oliver Sacks. And I told him to buy that book, and that's when he realized. And I didn't know. I told him, anyway, bottom line is, so now we start falling into a whole bunch of coincidences, which really are innumerable. In December, I asked Michael to come with me on a midnight run. We go into the streets of Manhattan. We give food, clothes, and toiletries to the homeless on the street. And so he came with us. He also came to our homeless ministry. We have a homeless ministry. We take in the homeless so they don't freeze to death in the winter months. We are one of 7 congregations in the Huntington area in Long Island. So he went on this trip, and he meets one of the Goy advisors. Now, mind you, I have been telling him, his wife has been telling him, go see an ophthalmologist. Go see a doctor. And he says, why? They're going to tell me what I already know? No way. I know. I can see. I don't need a doctor to tell me. Really, it was the fear of hearing something different that caused him not to want to go to a doctor. Probably the other 100 surgeries that he's had before that. So we go on this midnight run. One of the Goy advisors is an ophthalmologist that works at the VA hospital. Who would be the ophthalmologist, one of the ones that he would go and see? Coincidences? I think not. So he made an appointment. He was going to go see her January 9th. But it wasn't her that he saw. Anyway, on the 30th of December, he wanted to go into the DMV to find out what he needed to do to get his driver's license back. By the way, his vision was incredible. So he says to the clerk there, my name is Michael, and then his last name, and he gives her ID, and he says, I'd like to get my driver's license back. She says, that's great. She goes, okay, I see that we have you down as legally blind. And he says, I can see now. He says, that's wonderful. Did you have an operation? No. Did you change medication? No. Do you have paperwork from the doctor or hospital? No. Well, what happened? I went to this Greek priest and he prayed over me. So the woman goes, let me get my supervisor, excuse me. So she goes back and gets her supervisor. The supervisor comes, and he explains the whole story. And she says to him, sir, I can't in all good conscience give you a driver's license until you show me some medical proof as to why you can see. And he said, but I can read the chart for you right now. He goes, I won't even just read the second to the bottom line. I'll read the bottom line for you. She goes, I'm sorry, sir. She goes, wait. Behind you, in the corner, in the hallway down there, there's a sign that says, break room rules. Rule number 1. And he read the rules, which were half the size of the smallest thing there, and it was darker back there. And she says, okay, you convinced me. And he got a temporary license, and then, the picture one later. A week and a half later, he went to the doctor. And so Michael and I we're texting each other 3-4 times a day, emailing at least once a day. And bottom line is, we were kind of spiritually connected because of what happened. And we call each other constantly, even to today, and email and text each other, and we talk to each other exactly at the time that we need to talk to each other. And I don't know how to explain that other than the spiritual connection that we have. But so that afternoon, I know that he went to see a doctor. I'm running around doing house blessings. It's January 9th, I'm running around doing house blessings. And hey, Michael, what's going on? How'd it go today? Nothing. Michael, did you go to your doctor's appointment? What happened? Nothing. The whole entire day, no response. I'm like, oh my goodness, what happened? So the next morning, I text him again, Michael, can you please share with me what happened? What did the doctor say? And he responds, they say that I'm helplessly blind. And I respond, and yet you see? And he said, Father, the doctors are dumbfounded. They're literally grasping at straws. They said, there's no way with the damage to my optic nerve that I should be able to see. And I said, Michael, do you know what this means? And he goes, what? I go, if the doctors examined you and they saw that everything was physiologically perfect, we would say God physically healed you, and that was a miracle. But because they can't tell you why you should be able to see, it tells me that every time you open your eyes, it's a miracle. You are a walking icon. The day before Michael met me, he had seen an audiologist, and he was having trouble with his hearing. And the doctor said to him, I'm sorry, it was 2 days before I met him. I'm sorry, but it looks like the damage to the exposure of xylene is damaging your ability to hear, and you'll probably begin to lose your hearing as well. And I remember his prayer. I wonder if Helen Keller had said this, but it sounds familiar. He says, as long as I can hear the voices of those whom I love, I would say my life is good. But Lord, if you take that from me, then just take me. Now, Michael was upstate, but he moved down to Long Island about a year and a half earlier because his mother-in-law was dying. And he and his wife moved down there to be with her as she was dying. She lived 300-400 yards from the church on the same block. So the day before I met Michael, he was on the corner of Pulaski Road. He could hear the buses come, and he knew it was 7 steps from the curb to the middle of the street where the bus would hit him flat on. And he was there for an hour and a half, and something stopped him from throwing himself in front of the bus. And the next day we met. It's funny, a lot of you have heard that I just assigned to Worcester. I've gone through an interesting journey the last 4 months. I've never realized, as much as I do today, why long-suffering is a gift of the Spirit, why St. Paul calls it. There are times where, there are times when I was telling the story, when I was doing house blessings in January, this past January, where I would share the story and I'd go back into my car and just close my car door and I would literally feel the presence of God just permeate through my body and just cry and ask, how do I find myself in this position? And how blessed am I? So here's the bottom line. We want a happy ending story. Michael still has his eyesight back. He bought a farm. He's living upstate, a couple of blocks from his grandchildren. His wife has a degree in animal husbandry, so they're doing this. This was not a possibility for him. Their life was in an RV. They had sold everything, and they had the RV. That's what his world was small. And so when this happened to me, I thought, okay, Lord, you got me through all this suffering, so that to tell me for a fact, this is my place. St. Paraskevi is going to be the community I'm going to serve for the rest of my life, and Michael's going to convert to Orthodoxy, and that's not what happened. But today, I'm just so grateful for the journey, and everything that I went through brought me to the place where God wants me to be, right? And I think that's, in the end, that's the goal. And if that place is a place of suffering, glory be to God. There's always spiritual fruit waiting for us afterwards. Now I feel like I'm preaching. But anyway, so I'm going to go back on Tuesday, and all those people in the American Legion, all of them know about this miracle. And it was funny, at the St. Patrick's Day parade in Huntington, Michael and I marched together. And he marched in that parade last year with his guide dog. And there were a few people saying, weren't you the blind guy that was? And I was marching next to him. Glorious. But, glory be to God for real life miracles. I don't know why or how they happen. And like I said, it didn't happen because of my holiness. It didn't happen because I had nothing to do with it. It happened because of my sinfulness. That's all I believe. It happened because of my sinfulness, and I'm so grateful that that it happened in my life. I literally have had prayers where I just stop and I say, Lord, when I come in front of you, I'm going to thank you. How am I going to thank you for allowing this to happen to me? Because it changed my life. I don't know if I would have even been saved had I continued dealing with all of this, but I'm just so grateful. And when we're in moments of doubt and we lose our faith, share this story. It's powerful. It's real. Thank you.
Thank you.